Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on from where you're joining us today. On behalf of the Online Events Committee and Young Scholar Committees of IFE, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the Feminist Economics 101 event. My name is Ashima Sinha, and I'm a research scholar at the Levy Economics Institute of Bard College. Today, I will be hosting an extremely learned feminist scholar, Professor Indira Hirway, to talk about time use surveys in the context of care, work, and the economy. I'm very excited and feel honored to interview her, especially because in recent years, I have learned a lot from her excellent research on unpaid care and gender. Specifically, her contribution around time use surveys have been very motivational to me. Before introducing Indra further, let me tell you briefly about this series and the logistics for today. The new series of events, Feminist Economics 101, is a continuation of work begun in the 2021 pre-conference. These are 1-hour sessions that feature interviews with senior scholars about their research and key concepts in feminist economics and are conducted by young or early career scholars like me. This series of events is designed to create an interactive and intergenerational dialogue and include a question and answer segment towards the end, giving even the senior scholars an opportunity to ask questions to early career scholars like me. So in recent years, many people have joined IFE who are recent to feminist economics. And we believe this series will be a great platform to explore core concepts in feminist economics and also understand the methodological differences from mainstream economics alongside experts in the field. This in turn, we believe and hope will empower young scholars in the work and the research that they are engaged in. If you're interested in previous interviews, you can check them out on the IFE website and YouTube channel. I also strongly recommend staying tuned to IFE's social media and website for more information on our upcoming events, not just Feminist Economics 101, but other events like our Fireside Chats and Reproductive Justice series. The logistics of today's events. So this will take around 1 hour and be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel. The event can also be interpreted in Spanish, and you can pick your preferred language from the globe function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. For the next 30 to 35 minutes, I will pose questions to Dr. Indira on time use surveys. And then we aim to provide an interactive dialogue by including a Q&A segment. So at that point, feel free to put your questions in the chat or use the raise hand function. Lastly, as this is a Zoom call and not a webinar, so a friendly reminder to keep yourself muted. So with no further delay, it is my great honor to welcome today's senior scholar and introduce her. Indira Hirway, she is Professor of Economics at the Center for Development Alternatives in Ahmedabad, India. She is also a National Fellow of the Indian Society of Social Science Research in New Delhi and a Research Associate at the Levy Economics Institute of Bard College. Her major areas of interest are development alternatives, employment and labor market structures, poverty and human development, time use studies, and gender and economic development, among others. She has written several books and published numerous articles in national and international journals in these areas. She has been member or head of several expert groups, steering groups, study groups, and other policy making committees at the national and international levels. Hirway has served as a consultant to a number of global organizations, including the ILO, UNDP, UN Women, UN Statistical Division, as well as some foreign governments. Thank you so much, Indira, for being here with us today. And we are very happy and excited to have you. So we can probably start with the conversation now. My first question to you, drawing from your extensive research and expertise in time use surveys, I would like to start by asking you to shed some light on what exactly is a time use survey and what is its relevance in the context of care work, time poverty, and gender inequality when viewed through the lens of feminist economics.
Time use surveys provide comprehensive and detailed information on how individuals spend their time on a daily basis or weekly basis on different activities. These activities are activities within the production boundary, that's SNA activities. Outside SNA, that is non-SNA activities within the general production boundary, and personal activities, which are non-delegable activities. The main thing about time use surveys is that it is the only survey technique available to us at present for collecting information on activities which lie outside the production boundary outside national income accounts. They are quantitative summaries of time allocation, basically. Now, as regards the three things which you mentioned, care work, time poverty, and gender inequality, all are revealed or made visible by time use data. For example, care work. Now, care work is very important because basically it means taking care of physical, social, and emotional well-being of people. And it ensures that people are well behaved, well cared for, are healthy, educated, and secure. Care is an indispensable for well-being of people, for enhancing their capabilities, and for human capital formation. Care is of two types, unpaid care and paid care. Unpaid care is what is provided within the household mostly and voluntary services also, where care is taken of household members like children, the old, the disabled, the sick, etc. It includes paid care is social care, which is basically largely given by government, market, or civil society organizations for payment. And both the care together are the foundation for well-being and for social capital formation and human capital formation for the country. Similarly, time poverty can be defined as not having enough time to do what one would like to do. And in that sense, it reflects time stress, shortage of time. It is additional to it adds to the dimension of poverty because poverty usually ignores time dimension, but time poverty adds to that. Now, time poverty has not only income power, but also time poor. And that's why there are four kinds of possibilities. Not all income poor are time poor, but time poor can be income poor, time poor can be income richer, or time, time non-poor can be income poor, or time non-poor can be income non-poor also. So there are four combinations possible, and it's important to collect data on time poverty, particularly in a developing country where 30 to 40% bottom people suffer from some or other kind of time poverty, and that time use data helps us. Gender inequality is something which talks about uh, throws light on inequalities in the time use of men and women. Normally, it is found that unpaid care is highly unequally distributed, with women taking care of unpaid care mainly and women participating marginally, particularly in developing countries. In other countries also the same is the case. But in developing countries, the gap is little more. Paid work is also distributed unevenly, with men spending little more time on paid work than women. And if you consider the total work, then usually it is observed that total work is more for women than for men. And women carry a lot of burden of total women in care. I think I should stop here because then we have to speak with the next question. Okay.
No, but thank you for that. That was a good introduction about time use survey. Moving to my next question and a related one. Within the academic sphere, we see that there's been growing advocacy for this utilization of time use data as a means to address critical issues. So unpaid work, of course, as we discussed, but also gender wage gap and undervaluation on women's labor. So what are your thoughts on this? How exactly could time use data mitigate some of these challenges?
Actually, time use data, first of all, give visibility to these problems. Otherwise, the conventional data don't give any information on this. So unpaid care work, for example, is revealed, they get visibility through time. Gender wage gap also is revealed through time because we have We'll come just soon about that. And undervaluation of unpaid work also is revealed by times. Now, unpaid care work, for example, it is a critical issue for women or for any society because it takes care of human household care. But it is highly unequally distributed between men and women, and that's why it's a major concern. Secondly, it is invisible to policy in policy making, even in those countries where time use data are available, because they don't always use time use data for policy making. And this is highly unjust to women. It's a great injustice to women, and it violates basic human right of equality. So women don't get equal opportunities in the labor market, in the economy, or in the society because of this unequal distribution. And it's a basic constraint of women's freedom imposed by social norms. Now, if we come to wage gap, I would like to put this as rather than wage gap, TUS reveals the inferior status of women in the labor market. It explains that. Without US data, we cannot understand it fully. For example, when a woman enters the labor market, she enters with a burden of unpaid work on her shoulder. I mean, unpaid work itself a responsibility for unpaid work, because if you're somebody hired person working for you, but the responsibility remains with a woman. So she enters with a burden on her shoulder, and that's why it's no level playing to start with between men and women. Secondly, social norms lead to gender choice in the labor market for women. For example, because of low education, lower health, because of patriarchal norms, women have lower opportunities in the labor market. Again, restrictions on the mobility, again, social norms come into the picture. And that's why it's very difficult for women to balance paid and unpaid work in the labor market. For example, you can see that this is reflected in all labor market outcomes. Women's workforce participation rate is lower. They either are part-time work or sometimes outside labor. If it's that, then they are overcrowded and low productivity work, and thus they are segregated and discriminated. So gender wage gap is thoroughly revealed, and this revelation helps us in formulating policies. Undervaluation of women's work is also a serious problem. Labor force survey has two major weaknesses. One is that underreporting of work. Women tend to underreport their work, particularly in developing countries when economic work and household work are mixed up. And that's why they are not able to distinguish, or they have that bias that they don't report their work. Secondly, in the informal sector, where women are predominant, the work is sporadic, intermittent, irregular, seasonal, and that's why not captured adequately by labor force survey. And thirdly, unpaid care work is not reported. Sorry. Another problem with the labor force survey is that labor force survey does not provide enough information about the time spent, about the partial work done in the labor market, about simultaneous activities. Is there any problem?
Just a friendly reminder, please, everybody keep yourselves muted. Thank you.
So the second problem with labor force survey is that it doesn't provide details about the time spent by workers and how many multiple jobs done by the scattered nature of work, simultaneous activities, etc. So labor force survey, both the problems are solved by time use. The time use provides comprehensive information on women's on work of women, and that's why While the survey is well conducted, both these problems can be resolved. Finally, I think these are the two, or is there any problem left?
No, these are great things that you mentioned, Indra. Moving to my next question here. So do you want to continue on that one?
No, it's okay.
No, yeah, no, okay. So talking about the excellent book, Unpaid Work and Economy, Gender, Time Use and Poverty in Developing Countries, which you co-edited with Rania Antonopoulos in 2010, you discuss the importance of incorporating the dynamics of unpaid work in macroeconomic research and policy. So could you tell us more about the linkages between unpaid work and macroeconomics? And
Yeah.
also, could you tell us about the journey or the evolution that unpaid care work has seen in the field of economics since 1995?
First of all, let me say about the linkages. There are strong linkages between unpaid work and macroeconomics. To start with, unpaid work conducted at the household subsidizes private sector because it provides nurtured labor or new labor supply to private sector, ready-made. They don't have to pay for it. Secondly, it takes care of wear and tear of labor. When the worker goes back after getting tired and hungry and all that, unpaid work takes care of that so that next day he is ready to work. So in a way, it takes care of depreciation of labor. That's why private sector has to pay less on wages. So this is one way substitution. Unpaid work also substitutes government because it provides health, education, and nurturing, as well as care of particularly of disabled, sick, old, etc. All that is government has to do less because of unpaid work. So the strong linkage is that unpaid work subsidizes private and public, both the sectors. And that way, it helps in sustaining the macroeconomy. Secondly, unpaid work to the household is a major factor in the macroeconomy. Major sectors in the economy are public sector or public government. Second, private sector is sector. The third sector is household sector. And you can say fourth sector is CSO or voluntary sector. Now, household sector is a very important sector in the macroeconomy because household sector provides supply of labor to the economy, as I've seen. Apart from that, it gives labor to formal and informal, both the sectors. Again, it produces goods and services for the economy and for the well-being of people. So it's a part of GDP and that's why they contribute. And thirdly, it is households are also consumers and that way creates demand and that demand also helps in sustaining macroeconomy. So household sector is a major role in sustaining macroeconomy. Again, macroeconomic policies impact on paid and unpaid work both. As a result, what happens is that macroeconomic policies need to be designed and monitored in a way that it examines unpaid work also. For example, privatization of health raises the price of health. Now, that is impacted on several women in terms of taking paid work into the unpaid work into the family. That means work becomes unpaid work of women increases because of that privatization. And macroeconomic policy is also the same. So unpaid work is a part and parcel of macroeconomics. And as I said again, macroeconomy cannot sustain
research for this panel, talking something like more about Indonesia and the topic. And then I talked to some women, and then there is one.
Maybe is there a problem here?
But she agreed to give me her email, which couple of
I don't know. I think there was another speaker. Sorry, Indra, please continue.
Okay. So how do you incorporate? I mean, I don't have the latest and complete information on integration of unpaid work into macro economy, I would say, but there are certain ways which are very well established. One is valuation in satellite accounts, so that whatever has been performed in unpaid work is ultimately counted in national income. But this is not input method or output method, but it is satellite account so that it can be absorbed easily into national income account. Again, it can be incorporated by monitoring macro policies and designing macro policies, and labor market policies also can take care of integration of women's labor. And finally, employment planning for women is also necessary for understanding this. And anything else?
No, this is good.
Yeah, one more thing, that in order to integrate women into the mainstream economy, you can reduce their work and you can redistribute. Reduce by technology, by shifting to the mainstream, by developing infrastructure, by developing basic services on health and education. Redistributing could be done within the household. It is very important when sharing the work, and that can be done by providing incentives or tax credit or paternity leave, etc., or special training to men in house, taking care of the house. And as far as evaluation is concerned, I think it's a very long question now.
Yes.
Evaluation
You
is,
can go ahead.
yeah, evaluation, you can say that the first was 1995, and that was the year when HDR UNDP was on women. And second was in that year, World Conference, Women's World Conference took place. Both of these triggered changes in many countries. So, for example, main message of 1995 HDR was, if development is not engendered, it is endangered. And that's why take care of women's development. And this also means collect all forms of work of men and women. That is TUS, time use survey, is a big recommendation of this conference. Then again, urgent need to reduce unpaid work of women, so that reduce and redistribute, that was another message coming from it, and expand women's opportunities in the labor market and capacity building by quota or by affirmative action, what do you want? That was another important message. So 95 was a very important year that was. And after that, as far as you see with the development, after that, then one major development is the TUS. Time use surveys spread very fast after that. And small time use surveys now turn into national surveys. UNDP, UN Women, etc., funded time use surveys after that. And United Nations Statistical Division started its serious work on standardization and harmonization of time use surveys, which my paper in for UNDP talks about. And finally, I would say satellite accounts is another development, and when the gender and macroeconomics discussion at different levels, including Utah University had that, and UNESCAPE, UNECA, UNECLEC, all the started with gender and macroeconomics, which helped in integrating women labor, unpaid work.
Okay, thank you, Indira. That was very insightful overview on that. Moving to my next question. So, as you already mentioned in this discussion here, that there has been some efforts in the policy circle around care work and also in the academic circle in terms of research on unpaid care and everything. So, what would be your thoughts on the translation of effective research into policy making on unpaid care work, both internationally and at national levels. So basically, if you could share your thoughts on the extent of success that we've seen in translating research on unpaid work to policy making.
I think one thing which is very clear is at the international level. International organizations have promoted discussion on by experts in EGM, conferences, etc., on unpaid work and macroeconomy. So that is one very important contribution. And that's by UNSQ, UNDP, UN Women, and local network of people, countries. So all these, one thing that happened. Secondly, care research. For that, TUS has progressed a lot. So UNSC and ILO together have contributed to sound concepts and methods of timely surveys, and together they are trying to develop a methodology which is applicable to developed and developing countries. And so I think the new guidebook is also soon coming. The old one is not that relevant anymore, but I am told that they are working on it right now. Another thing is ILO's path-breaking resolution in 2013 is a very important development. It gives new definition of work, new forms of work also, new labor force status classification, and labor underutilization. So it has provided a path-breaking major revolution in work and types of work. This is something extremely important for economics, but particularly for women's work, because women's work is very relevant. Another thing which has happened in the policy field, sustainable development goals. Now, sustainable development goals, we normally talk about 5.4.
Right.
But 5.4 is not enough. I have a paper in Journal of Human Development where I say that sustainable development or time-based survey is required for large number of other sustainable development goals, such as poverty, time poverty, or health, education, energy, and many other areas. So sustainable development is important, but not for 5.4 only, but for many other activities. I will say again, valuation. Now, valuation I am mentioning because I hope that someday when the methodology of satellite accounts is finalized, this unpaid work will be totally merged with national accounts, because that is the ultimate aim of this activity of valuation. It's a distant dream maybe, but people are working on it, sophisticated, more and more higher methodology to do this, etc. Recently, there was a workshop in Finland on finalizing this methodology and all that. Again, UN Women and ILO program. That's a major development in this area. It promotes decent work for in this inclusive growth and investment in care economy. So there's a major development which key outcomes would be more important, very important, political consensus on macroeconomic policy. Another outcome would be sectoral and industrial policy to reduce segregation of women in labor market and in the economy. Thirdly, the outcome would be investment in care services so that health, education, and well-being of people are very well taken care of in the mainstream economy and not by women alone. So this program, if it is successful, because it's going to be implemented through national governments, so let us hope that this program will be really very useful, because it will take care of employment, economic policies, care economy, gender equality, and safety management. So this is something very important.
Right. No.
That's enough.
Yes. No, thank you so much for that. A very detailed one and very important points, I think. So, moving to more specific questions about time use surveys. So, in your latest paper, Conducting Time Use Surveys, Employing Rigorous Methods to Produce Quality Data, that was published in the Indian Journal of Labor Economics in 2021. So, you mentioned about the challenges associated with implementing time use surveys, specifically in terms of design and data collection. So, could you discuss a little bit more here about those issues, specifically in the context of global south or just general, and also some specifics on how low and middle income countries face a greater number of challenges in implementing time use surveys compared to developed countries, and if that is so?
I think let me first start with saying that developing countries, or what I can say LMIC, ICs, have serious problems. One is that governments or NSOs do not appreciate the utility of time use survey in understanding critical issues of the economy and in national policy making of these time use data. Second problem is that time use survey is a very complex survey. I mean, we all know that it is not like any other household survey, but it requires time diary to be filled in. And let me add that if you want to conduct a time use survey, it has to be done systematically through time diary. It can't be done by questions, stylized questions. And they do not have the expertise also for doing this, and they don't have funds also for it. That's another problem. Third problem is they have been guided, sorry about it, but they were in initial years, they were guided not well by certain global agencies, like in Latin America, UNDP, UN Women promoted time use surveys which are based on stylized countries. Their idea was, let us not go for the quality of data, but have some broad idea about women's. But I think that if you want time use data to be accepted core data, you have to be very careful about the quality of the data. So what happens is, because of the limitations, the quality of data produced by many countries is so bad or not acceptable to the core statistician or politician. But while time use survey, what shall we do then? I think the first thing you should do is that you should have and there are two kinds of problems here. One problem is about the designing of the survey. Now, there are different components of time use survey. There are objectives, sampling, time reference, classification of activities, context variables, and so on and so forth. Now, each of the variables are designed independently by many countries, but they are all linked, and unless they are linked, they cannot be integrated into one time use survey. For example, your objective is to do valuation, but if you don't collect required information in background questionnaire, you can't do valuation of this. You have to have information on assets. You have to have information on how people are getting their assets or ownership by assets, etc. Second problem is data collection. This is another major problem. And here, the question is basically of collecting data and getting right record from respondents. That is something that is not happening. And that's why, they make many compromises. Second set of problem is that problems as compared to developed countries. Though, as I mentioned, time use problems in developing countries or in southern countries, they are basically these two: data collection and designing time. But if it comes to developed countries, I have had several opportunities to interact with statisticians from developed countries in conferences and workshops and so on, and I found that, first of all, let's say problems compared to developed countries. So my problem is, of course, low literacy. And that's why people cannot really write their responses. That's why you have to
Right.
interviewer, and interviewer should be very careful in collecting. Secondly, even use of tablets and laptops, etc., is sometimes very expensive, or sometimes it is not possible for illiterate population. And sometimes there is no expertise in data analysis also. So these are the problems as compared to developed countries. Now, what do we learn from developed countries? Developed countries or LMIC can learn from developed countries. Firstly, data analysis, because they have expertise in data analysis. Raw time use data. You have to learn to analyze them because you have to establish synergy between labor force survey and time use survey, or you have to see how exactly it is happening. It's very important. And that expertise can charts and designs, etc. Developing country doesn't know how to do these things. From time use raw data, and that's why this is one expertise we can. And what are some of the limited improvement that global north needs? First problem that they face is declining response. Sample does not remain representative. This is one problem we have noticed in many countries, including Netherlands, Germany, and many other European countries, as well as Australia and Canada. So declining response is one thing, because people are no more interested in such long distance data. That's one problem. Second problem is they use high-tech data analysis, very highly technical, but the sample becomes very small, and that doesn't make any representativeness. Thirdly, funds shortage even they face, because they collect funds from different departments and they say we won't give money because we don't find it useful. And fourthly, they focus more on socio-cultural issues. The sociologists were the one who started time survey in these countries, and less on economic issues. Now, gradually it is happening at the conceptual level, etc., theoretical level, but in practice, this is not happening. So, this is what both the countries have to improve to universalize time use and collect quality data.
Extremely helpful points, Indra. I think a lot of people wanted to hear about these challenges here. But in the interest of time, I'll probably put the last question here and we could briefly answer this one. What advice would you offer to young scholars who are interested in utilizing mixed research methods in feminist economics, particularly for implementing fieldwork to gather time use data?
I see that many young scholars are conducting time use surveys in developing countries, or in LMIC, you can say, conducting this. And there is a lot they have to keep in mind. Particularly when they are doing field work, they have to, basically, they should use mixed mode methods. I mean, if you read my paper on how to conduct time use survey, then that paper describes all the methods and concludes that time diary method is the best method. And you have to use it, but if you can't use it, then use mixed mode methods. First of all, why mixed mode methods? To improve response rate, to improve data quality, to reduce cost of conducting time use survey, and to improve overall coverage of the survey. So one way of mixed mode is, after the survey is over, ask probing questions like South Africa did. Second is using computer-aided telephonic survey investigation by computer-aided personal interviews randomly. So it cross-checks. So this combination also is good for getting improved response and improved quality of data. Thirdly, computer-aided time use survey with CAPI, computer assisted personal interviews. So the computation, You can have telephonic interviews also in country. But the idea is that two together will cross-check each other's faults and will provide wider coverage and better data. Personal paper-based work also can be used with highly educated people if they are there in the economy, like India. We have low literacy, but at the same time, they are highly educated people. So for them, one can use, like developed countries, self-reported time diaries and copy or computer-assisted person interviews. So all these things are possible. So combination will again help in getting correct data. So another way would be giving options to respondents so that they know whatever is more comfortable and they will provide data and that which will have better response. And lastly, I would like to discuss Nancy Fuller's paper here, which is on design and harmonization issues in time use. She says that care is a major issue on which time use data are not really corrected there. It's underestimated frequently, and when inconsistencies are there in the measurement, and sometimes there is no consensus about the methodologies to how to collect these data. For example, direct care is of three types: direct care, face-to-face care, for example, and direct supervisory care. Because supervisory care also is a part of care, or care performed in a simultaneous activity. So three categories of care, all three should be caught properly. Now, for that you need mixed mode because direct care can be done through ordinary time use survey. I mean, not diary based, of course. Direct supervisory care requires some kind of a probing questions or something, and care performance in simultaneous requires in-depth probing, or one can say that stylized questions. So this mixed mode will provide better data to anyone. Now the question is this: there is a need to standardize these three approaches, care approaches, and mixed mode should be used, but mixed mode with standardization and harmonization so that inter-country comparability of the data will remain there. So mixed mode is useful. So I would say that developing countries are still very far away from this. But my paper, which I wrote for developing countries only, I think that that paper will lead to better data and comprehensive coverage of time.
Okay. This is wonderful, Indra. Yes, definitely. We should all probably look at that paper of yours. So I think now we would probably reverse roles, as I mentioned, and you can pose a few questions to me. And after that, we will open the microphone for the audience. So you would have a few questions for me, right? Or we open the floor to the microphone?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you can go ahead, yes.
Yeah, you have done time use survey in UP, I believe. Right. So yeah. I would like to ask first question on that. What are the problems did you face and how did you solve them? That's one thing. And secondly, do you think that it affected the quality of data, quality of time use data? That's my first question. And second question is, how can care economy be integrated with the macroeconomics, mainstream economics, care economy, macroeconomics? I mean, what are your thoughts about it? Because you are a learned scholar, so I suppose you should be able to answer that question.
Okay. Right. So thank you for those questions, Indra. So with regard to your first question, I implemented a time use survey with my colleagues in the state of Uttar Pradesh, as you mentioned. There were, of course, several challenges on primary that you were also talking about was collecting data using time diary approach. We were very, we really wanted to do time diary approach, considering it's the most ideal method. But we did it, we adopted this method using personal interview methods, as you said, the mixed mode or something. So in that, primary issue was it was very time consuming. Just the time diary module would take around 35 to 40 minutes for us. And that really led to loss of interest and attention of the respondents. They would end up giving very casual answers after a point of time. And that we thought initially was affecting the data quality, the data that we were recording. Of course, there were a lot of things that we still have to learn in the process, but the immediate solution to that was just making the rapport, as you said, with the respondents and trying them to make them understand that why is it important for us to collect this data and what impact could it bring. That way, there was some incentive for them to participate more seriously in those time diary responses. So that was one thing. And more interestingly, there were some cultural factors that we observed. It was in India, which is a patriarchal society. And what we observed culturally, that it was difficult to record true information from women respondents because women were always accompanied with some men or some male member of the household. And that we thought were biasing their responses. They would not really open up to the survey investigators. They would just because the men are listening to the conversation, they would not talk very freely. So those kind of cultural factors were coming into play when we were collecting data. And those are things, especially in rural areas, very difficult to solve because those people would then become very violent if you just enter the house and you're just interviewing them. So that was a challenging part as well. And one very easy solution again was rapport formation, as you mentioned, that it is very important. We always read a lot about it, but it really has to be implemented very well. And of course, the training of survey investigators. So the survey investigators really need to be trained in a way that they understand what the survey is capturing, because only then can they really communicate it with the respondents. And illiteracy is a problem in India. So implementing a time diary where the respondents fill it themselves is still something that cannot be very widely implemented. So we would have to rely on something like time diary approach based on personal interview methods. So those were some things I would like to mention here about that question of yours. And for the first question that you asked about integrating care economy into the macro economy, one primary thing that comes to my mind was, of course, integrating care surveys, time use surveys into the national income accounting. That kind of integration really is something that is the need of the hour. But that said, more specific points I would like to say here that I, as a researcher in this field of care and macroeconomy, observed during the process is that it is still a problem that care work is not understood and recognized explicitly as something that could be impacting macroeconomics. It is still seen as a microeconomic phenomena or something that takes place in the household and by women. So a lot of people still would not want to get engaged in research around something like unpaid care work affecting macroeconomics. So that recognition, I think, is really important. And more specifically, collecting more care work data, not just unpaid work data through time use surveys, but more widely, even public and market provisioning of care data needs to be collected at a wider scale and more efficiently, more regularly, like other labor and time use income surveys, I would say. So that could really make these linkages between care economy and macroeconomy more visible to the mainstream domain as well. So that visibility is really crucial. And we've seen some researchers like Elisa Bronstein, Akram Lodi, Stephanie, they've worked a lot in recent years on incorporating social reproduction into macro modeling. So even conceptual frameworks incorporating care economy is really crucial and something that we young scholars would probably focus more on, I would say. So that is, so that is from my end. And now I wanted to be brief so that we have questions from our audience as well. So you can put your questions in the chat if you have any questions to Indira, and you can also use the raise hand function and I'll get to you there. So let me see if we already have some questions here. So there is a question here from Jhelum. Despite the challenges to capture unbiased time spent on unpaid household work by individuals, why are time use surveys rare, especially in developing countries?
I think, shall I reply to that question first?
Yeah, you can talk about it. I mean,
Yeah. And my main thing was, which is what I wanted to talk also, that
okay.
there are two problems, for major problems, which are preventing countries from conducting time use surveys. One is they are expensive and difficult. And first, one is expensive and second is difficult. And that's why most of the countries, I give you an example of Pacific Islands. Nobody is able to collect time use data because they think that people don't respond. Indonesia, for example, takes 2 hours time slot for collecting data. Same way in African countries, just for 1 day time use survey, and then they think it's time use survey. So it's very difficult. So one thing I think what we are working on, we have been working on for the last 5 years, is on making time use less expensive, reduce cost, and second is making it easy. And the paper which I written on that basically aims at these two things, making it less expensive and easy. That's why the idea is there. I'm not talking in details about the paper. But the idea is that reduce the cost by focusing on representative sample and using simple tablets, like, so that cost of data entry, cost of coding is reduced. If they use simple tablets on data entry and on the field itself, they can do coding, then cost declines substantially. In the same way, when you make it easy, this makes it easy and less expensive. Again, what you can do is that you can use time use classification, which is given by internationally accepted classification, and it's very simple. I mean, if you can think about this classification, keep classification together, then investigators can easily do this. Again, half the literacy, supposing 50% literacy, use time diary. So there are ways and ways of reducing this, and that is the most important requirement. Expenses and easy.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. It's expensive, and there is probably less funding for time use surveys. That I literally face this challenge while applying for grants for my time use survey. This is something still not sought after in terms of, like, there will be hardly any funding that will be provided to you for a time use survey. So that way also, it's a challenge for young scholars, I think. Another question here. What are your thoughts? This is from Lavanya. What are your thoughts on how India conducted its first time use survey? Are there any suggestions you have to improve the data quality in the second time use survey? You are muted, Indira. Indira, could you please unmute yourself?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
There is a paper published in Economic and Political Weekly which talks about the major weaknesses of time use survey 2019 in India. And there I am talking about data collection methods, designing problems, use of proxy in data collection, and shortcuts taken up by the NSO in collecting time use data, as a result of which, for example, they say half an hour, then only 3 activities. 3 activities mean 10, 10, 10. If there are 2 activities, then 15, 15. If there is 1 activity, then 30 minutes, like that. So this kind of thing doesn't help. Again, they have proxy. So somebody else, even friend and relative, can answer time use of a person, etc. That's not correct at all. Then there are problems with sampling, data collection, data analysis, and so on and so forth. Employment is neglected again. So I'm not going to in details of this, but if you read that paper, you will get all the information. This paper was published in APW in the year 2021.
Yes, that is something I also read, and it's very insightful. One should definitely read that. This one is from Bharti. Are there state level time use surveys in India? Has any state attempted it?
Sorry?
Are there state level time use surveys in India? Has any state attempted it?
Actually, when pilot time use survey was conducted in 97, 98, at that time, 6 states were selected. And of course, all India time use surveys for all the states. But the 6 states collected also their own state level data. Like all state level data were collected by state people in 19 also. And the 6 states collected separately, analyzed separately, and published also reports separately. So that is there in that states where Tamil Nadu, then Madhya Pradesh, then Orissa, Haryana, and Gujarat,
Gujarat.
and one more states from northeast, Meghalaya. So these are the states we selected, which have very interesting separate reports come out also. So that's what it is. But this is all under the supervision of central government and not independently so far.
Right. The next question from Surbhi. Is it appropriate to compare labor market indicators such as workforce participation rate from Indian time use survey and labor force surveys?
My answer is no. When time use survey is conducted, they have a background questionnaire in which they collect information on your employment status, participating this, that, etc. But that is the initial. It doesn't add any information collected from time use. And that's why that information is not adequate. Many scholars, I think in terms of analyzing Indian time use survey, many people have done a lot of mistakes, including many good magazines, good journals have published those papers, but data analysis has been very bad. So one is they don't use the data from background questionnaire, but use it from the mainstream. Now the question is that labor force survey and time use survey do not have synergy. In the sense that labor force survey is for the weekly status, consider the entire week. So if you have worked for reference period is entire week. So if I have worked for 1 hour in the reference period, then I get that, no problem. And but time use collects data only for 1 day. So when you have information on entire week as compared to 1 day, data are not comparable. And that's why you have to make it comparable. I had suggested to our expert committee, I was a member of the expert committee, but I had to give a big note to them later on. One problem with our committee was that what I suggested was that if labor force survey sample, if part of the sample is used for time use survey, then you have rich information of labor force survey and rich information of time use survey. You can enrich the labor force data. So that was the addition. But even if you don't do, at least if you assume that time use survey is conducted in a representative manner, that means each day of the week has equal opportunities of getting selected, then at the macro level, the time use data would be representing the overall economy. But worker would be only those who spend 1 hour in the week. If they are spending less than 1 hour, they are not workers. So if I work for half an hour or 10 minutes or something, I'm not a worker according to ILO definition. And that's why from TUS information, first find out who are the workers. That is, who have put 1 hour or more time on work. And less than that should be removed. That's one way of identifying workers. And then when you identify the workers, then you must remember that this is not a kind of very same sample, and that's why this kind of information on workers and time use data will not be useful for unit level analysis. Because a person, if he is a worker, for example, in the time use, he may not be working on Tuesday and Wednesday. If he's working on Monday, and if you are collecting that one day data, then he will appear to be a worker. But Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is not worker. And that's why he will not be a worker in ILO definition. So data are not comparable. And that's why this approach which I suggested, calculate only 1 hour kind of data, which will be representative at the macro level. So at the macro level, if you assume that the representative sample is there, and each day of the week has had an equal chance of getting selected, and you have selected only those people who have worked for more than 1 hour, then that could give you macro picture. And that macro picture can be compared with labor force survey, not unit level analysis. I hope you understand. Is it clear?
Yeah. Yes, no, these are great points, Indra. I think the one who questioned probably also listened to it carefully. But just one last question and then we would wrap up. So this is from Arjun. They're asking that if time spent and health status is something we could explore in the Indian time use survey. So are there any chance to have health related variables in the survey in the future?
Sorry, health related questions.
Yes. Self-rated health status. Is there a way we could also include that?
Actually, let me health-related questions, and you can do that. But let me add one thing, that you can have health, you can have education, you can have time use of workers, teachers, industrial workers, all India survey. It can be sector specific, it can be area specific, it can be group specific, small surveys. That also is done. And that in-depth survey of a sector or an area or a group will help you in collecting all these data. Because in the background questionnaire, you can collect all these data and get in-depth information about that. Now, if you want to collect health data at the all India level, then you have to collect the right kind of information in the background questionnaire as to who is healthy, and healthy means what, and you have to define it and in the background questionnaire. And then the time use of this health people will be available to you. But I would suggest that for the all India thing, if you don't want to collect details of health, then you might use a small survey, which could be, as I said, area-wise, sector-wise, issue-wise, or group-wise. Those small surveys will be very adequate.
Wonderful. So thank you so much, Indra, for those last reflections and for all those valuable things you shared with us today. I think we're all taking away many useful learnings on time use surveys and care work. Also, I hope more young scholars can encounter feminist scholars like you and feel empowered within and beyond the feminist community. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today and for the wonderful discussion. Please look out for future IFE online events. Best wishes to you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you for giving this opportunity.